return to racing. Wherever you are around the world, we hope that you are safe and well. Here is our new condensed calendar. We're in Imola, then we go to Spain and Barcelona and Portimao in Portugal, ahead of Mugello, Spa-Francorchamps, Misano, and of course our World Finals at the beginning of November in Abu Dhabi, in the United Arab Emirates. All the social media, as you can see on the bottom of the screen there, and this is our circuit location here in Imola. We are perhaps an hour's drive time from the city of Bologna, a track which is very evocative and is very challenging for the drivers, and one that they love. 4.9 kilometers, 21 turns, 12 of them left, 9 of them are right-handers. And lots of elevation changes as well through the 3 sectors that you can see coloured on the track map animation on the screen in front of you. So the Trofeo Pirelli drivers on track, the mix of pro and AM drivers. 29 degrees is the air temperature, 41 degrees the track temperature. So let's take a look at Imola first of all. Imola. All the thrills of the Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli Europe begin, finally. A circuit that has always been in the DNA of the prancing horse and its one-make championship. Car stories, driver stories, and this time the flavour is even more special. The starting light opens a new chapter in a long tradition, now featuring the Ferrari 488 Challenge Evo. With the enormous desire of everyone to get back on track, our voyage in time has landed us here. So this is where we start from. Ladies and gentlemen, simply and magically, all the excitement of Ferrari. And it is about to be unleashed on track. As you can see, the grid assembled, the cars assembled, and perhaps it's a somewhat smaller grid than ordinarily, but that, of course, is part of the COVID-19. But what we lack in quantity, we have got more than in quality. The strength and depth of the 2 classes in Trofeo Pirelli Pro and AM is enormous. We have some returning drivers, we have some promoted drivers, and we have some brand new drivers. So we know from the qualifying session that happened earlier on today, it's going to be close, tight, and scintillating for the 30-minute race to come. The Hublot safety car gets ready to lead the cars away then, and there you can see the final preparations going on ahead of the 30-minute race to come from the Ferrari Challenge. So the Imola circuit then, and there is Manuela Gosner. Now, Manuela is talking here to Michel Gatting, who is one of the new drivers to join us in Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli, the Iron Lynx racer, who, of course, has raced with Manuela Gosner and also Rahal Frey in the Ferrari 488 GT3 car in the ELMS series. And she has a season in prospect in the Ferrari Challenge as well with the Iron Lynx team, which is headed up by Deborah Mayer, herself a former Ferrari Challenge driver. So expecting good things from Michel Gatting. She's P3 on the grid, 3rd fastest in the Trofeo Pirelli Pro class. It was Fabienne Volvend, the lady that became the first ever lady to win a Ferrari Challenge race outright, and she did that here at this very track in Imola. It's very much to her liking, as can be told from qualifying, because she's put the car on pole position. Fabienne Volvend goes from P1. Emanuele Maria Tabacchi is right alongside in that blue and black liveried car that you've just seen. He's been promoted into the Pro class from the AM class from last year, where he won that championship, and there is the number 33 car of Emanuele Maria Tabacchi. Expect good things for him. Very much in his target sights will be the Trofeo Pirelli Pro Championship title come the end of the season in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. The weather conditions pretty nice, to be honest with you. It's quite warm here, I can tell you, but a little bit of harmless high cloud around. We're not expecting any rain whatsoever. The track is going to remain dry, says he. The commentator's curse, potentially. But the track should stay dry for the entire duration of the race to come this afternoon. Delighted that you're with us. Delighted that we are back racing again. Now, let's turn our attention to the Trofeo Pirelli AM class. Within class, the pole position goes the way of Frederick Paulsen. I've been talking about Emanuele Maria Tabacchi. Let's hear a bit more from him now.
Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, Italia, Rosso Corsa. I'm 35 years old. I come from Milan, Italy. I have 2 daughters, and I'm Pirelli Am World Champion. Thinking at 2019, it was a really emotional year where I became world champion in Mugello, and the best moment was in Bahrain for the first race where I won. Finally, we are back on track here in Imola with the new 488 Challenge Evo and ready for a new challenge in the Trofeo Pirelli series.
He really is a super guy, and when we spoke to him earlier on, he's so full of enthusiasm. And when you consider, but 2 seasons ago, he had no real racing experience. The only racing he'd done was as part of the club challenge, which is very much timed laps. You're not competing with anyone else. So he has done extraordinarily well. And as I said to you just a few moments ago, he will be aiming for the championship come the end of the season. I was talking about the AM class. Frederick Paulsen goes from P1 in terms of the AMs. Then it's Mathieu Weibo, and Oliver Grotz then goes from P3. That's the way it looks. The grid lined up, and the cars are ready to go. And we are standing by for the 30-minute Ferrari Challenge race to get our season underway, to get the green lights. It's at this moment that the tension builds like never before. For each and every one of the pilots, the drivers that are in those cars ready to do battle, the new 488 Challenge Evo car. There is Emanuele Maria Tabacchi then. He's poised, ready to race.
Liechtenstein, Octane 126.
Hi, Fabian. First race this season and first pole position with new 488 Challenge Evo. What do you feel in this circuit you won 2017?
Yeah, putting in a pole position for the first race of the season is of course something special. I've done it before in 2017. I put it on pole, so I can do it again, and I can't wait to kick off the season right now.
Thank you, Fabienne. The golden locks of Fabienne Volvend, and thanks to Michele Mambelli, who is our trackside reporter there, socially distant, of course, getting an interview with our pole sitter, Fabienne Volvend, who will be going from P1.
I'm from Denmark and I race for Formula Racing.
And Frederick Paulsen going from P1 in terms of the AM drivers. So that mix of pro drivers and AM drivers assembled on the grid then. And here is the grid in full. Fabienne Volvend, Emanuele Maria Tabacchi going from P1 and P2. As we scroll to the next row of the grid, we see Frederick Paulsen, the best of the AM drivers. He goes from P4. Michel Gatting alongside, though, is going from P3. Mathieu Weibo and Oliver Grotz then go from P5 and P6. David Gerstner, who I don't think is on the grid, and then AC goes from P8 ahead of Z-Man in P9, and Thomas Neubauer, who had a torrid time of it in qualifying. He goes from very last place on the grid. As always, when it comes to the Ferrari Challenge, my statistician, the man that helps me more than anybody else, is alongside me once again. Nicholas Spalek. I was just saying, Thomas Neubauer, he's got work to do, hasn't he?
Oh, he absolutely has. Good afternoon, everybody. He didn't really set a time in qualifying. That means that he has to start dead last on the grid, but his pace that he has shown over the last seasons particularly is very, very strong. So if everything is right with his car, and by virtue of looking at the qualifying, that may be a big if, he's definitely one to watch from the start and throughout the race.
Thank you, Nico, who will be offering his opinion during various parts of the race. The cars are on their formation lap then, and critically, not only is the car the new 488 Challenge Evo with various changes to the car, Pirelli have come up with a new tyre as well, so the tyre offers much more longevity so that the drivers are going to be able to push all the way through until the end of the race. So they will be thinking about getting the tyres into the optimum operating temperature right now. We're on board with the Ublo safety car. Looking back at Fabian Volvend, who's already had so much success here at Imola, and she'll be wanting to repeat that success very much. We go on board with the Scuderia Prague driver, Mateusz Weibo, who goes from P2 within class. It's actually P5 in the grid. You can see adjustments being made there by Mateusz Weibo, the Scuderia Prague driver. Brilliant on-board shot that we can see. And do bear in mind, the screen that you can see flickering on the dashboard is because the 488 Challenge Evo cars do not have a rear view mirror. It is camera based, and therefore what the drivers can see behind their car is projected onto that screen, which actually affords even better vision than a rear view mirror. I can't tell you how excited I am to get the season underway and to get racing underway. The Ublo safety car will peel off into the pit lane. It will be the responsibility of Fabian Volvend and Emanuele Maria Tabacchi to control the pace of the rolling lap. It's Octane 126 versus Rosso Corsa, as the cars now enter the start-finish straight, which isn't a straight. It's got a couple of kinks in it. It looks a very, very good grid lineup for me. Race Control will be very happy with this. Michel Gatting is already champing at the bit to try and get going as well. We await the lights to go green. The cars very slowly approach the kink that I was talking about, just one of those. And then the roar of the 488 Challenge cars will be released now as Michel Gatting straight on the inside. Look at this, onto the grass as she tries to get the better of Fabian Volvend. Emanuele Maria Tabacchi seals that P1 before they even get into the Variante Tamburello. So, Emanuele Maria Tabacchi leading, Michel Gatting P2, Fabian Volvend relegated to P3. Thomas Neubauer has already made up a couple of places right from the back of the grid. So, for the first time of asking then, they go through the Variante Villeneuve now. So all these Trofeo Pirelli cars, the mix of Pro and Am drivers, Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, Trofeo Pirelli Am champion last year, is leading the first of the Trofeo Pirelli races for this year. Showing good, he got the start nailed absolutely perfectly and anticipated when to give it a footfall, and he executed it with perfection. Thomas Neubauer then, already, as I have said, has made up several places and is hoping to make up several more. So it's the Rosso Corsa driver Emanuele Maria Tabacchi then who climbs uphill now with Michel Gatting in hot pursuit. And Fabian Volvend, who will be disappointed that the start did not go better for her. And there's Thomas Neubauer already pursuing the car of Oliver Grotz. And if he can get past that, then he will find himself up into P6 already. So the cars go underneath that bridge then and run downhill. And as they head towards the Ravazza turns, turn number 18 and 19 on this really very, very tricky circuit. So already Emanuele Maria Tabacchi is about to put the first lap in the book, and he has a significant margin over Michel Gatting of some 6/10, but Michel Gatting will not or cannot afford to let Emanuele Maria Tabacchi get too far away. She has got to keep him within her target sights. Michel Gatting new to the Ferrari Challenge this year, but has got huge racing experience, not only across tin tops, not only across single-seaters, but also in GT cars as well. But Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, what is standout for this man is the fact that just 2 seasons ago, he had not even set foot in a racing car. His pedigree, therefore, Nico Spalak, is extraordinary.
Absolutely. His learning curve is just off the charts. And I have to say, that start looked a little bit ragged, to be honest. Where Fabienne usually would just put her foot down. It didn't look quite like that, allowing the other two to get alongside. But since then, Emanuele Tabacchi hasn't looked back, and he's definitely stretching his legs, putting in fastest sector after fastest sector. So the order for Michel and Fabienne is to stay as close as possible to see if maybe there is a tire degradation issue later on in the race. But right now they can't do anything about the speed of this man.
You are absolutely right. And of course, with the new 488 Challenge Evo and the new Pirelli tyres as well, tyre degradation may not be quite as obvious as it was perhaps in previous seasons. So both Michel Gatting and Fabienne Volvend will be hoping for maybe a mistake from Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, but that's pretty unlikely. Mathieu Sveibo is the guy that is leading in terms of the AMS. And there you can see the number 56 car being pursued by Frederick Paulsen, who is P5. Oliver Gertz is P6. And Thomas Neubauer, who is in P7 overall, but P4 in class, as you can see, is really pursuing Gertz to try and find a way by as he takes a look at the inside now before the Variante Tamburello, but thought better of it. Of course, what Thomas Neubauer needs to do is he's not having a fight with these drivers, really, although, of course, he is, because he wants to get past them, because he's in a completely different class. But he needs to get by the three cars that are ahead of him that would give him any opportunity to try and catch Fabienne Volvend, Michel Gatting and Emanuele Maria Tabacchi. But with the speed that they're offering at the moment, with Tabacchi having just put in the fastest lap, a 1:44.221, I would think for Thomas Neubauer it is a forlorn hope, truthfully. So here comes race leader, extending his lead between himself and Michel Gatting to 1.5 seconds, which is a huge gap in the space of just the first 4.5 minutes of this race. Looking comfortable, looking set up perfectly. Of course, Rosso Corsa, a hugely successful team. They know how to engineer a car and set it up perfectly for Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, and that's what they've done. For me, I think Fabienne is getting just a little bit closer now to Michel Gatting, perhaps pursuing that P2 place. Well, there's no perhaps about it, but perhaps she is closer now than she was on the previous lap. As all the drivers in that replay, you can see just how much curb they take to try and straighten that chicane as much as possible. There, I think, from that shot, you can see that Fabienne is beginning to reel in Michel Gatting, so there's going to be a two-way fight for P2 any moment now, I would suggest. Let's watch Fabienne now. Don't think she's quite close enough to have a go going into the Variante Tamburello, unless Michel makes a mistake. And Michel does not make a mistake, so Fabienne has to just continue following that number 83 car, which is in P2 at the moment. All this plays into the hands nicely of Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, who is able just to escape up the road and increase his margin between P1 and P2, where it now sits at 2.096 seconds. We were on board momentarily with Michel Gatting, as you know, she is right in the middle here. She's hunting, but being hunted more. And that is because Fabienne Volvend is an awful lot closer to Michel Gatting than Michel Gatting is to Emanuele Maria Tabacchi ahead. Fabienne Volvend knows how to drive a race. She knows that sometimes if things don't go right at the very start, patience can win the day, and therefore she will pick her opportunity. She'll try and put the Iron Dame driver, Michel Gatting, under pressure and keep the pressure there for several laps and then pounce like a viper to try and go through. Michel Gatting, though, experienced racer, is not likely to make a mistake, I would suggest, and we're on board with her now as she runs downhill now, this very fast section, heading towards the Ravazza turns. The speed they carry into the turns is absolutely extraordinary. Fabienne is closer on this lap than she was on the previous lap. This time, I think there is a possibility for Fabienne to have a go going into the Variante Tamburello. Let's see. Straight line speed from Gatting, though, means that the gap increases a little bit. They're on board with the Octane 126 team. You can see Yannick Bardi there, one of the senior race engineer, who of course will be willing Fabienne Volvend, his driver, on in this quest to get on terms and get past Michel Gatting. So the gap evolution you can see on the screen before you. And through the twisty parts of the circuit, that's where Fabienne is able to get closer to Michel Gatting. Straight line speed for Michel seems strong, And that's potentially where Fabienne loses out all the good work she's done through the twisty sections of the track. So we continue to watch this battle for P2 in the Trofeo Pirelli Pro class between the two lady racers, if I'm allowed to say that, Michelle Gatting and Fabienne Volvend. Here's Mathias Weibo, who is leading in terms of the AMS. Frederik Paulsen in car number 98. He's P2 in the AMS, P5 in the race overall, ahead of Oliver Gertz, and then Thomas Neubauer, who is running P4 in class, but P7 in the race overall. Of course, the ticker on the left-hand side of your screen keeps you in touch with everything that's going on and where everyone is relative to their positions within class. If the little square to the left-hand side is red, it means they're a Trofeo Pirelli Pro driver. If it's white, it means they're a Trofeo Pirelli AM driver. That explains that, and the first 9 minutes of the race is done. Again, Fabienne Volvend just decreases that gap between herself and Michelle Gatting a little bit, but this is where Michelle is able just to extend it as well. It's the straight lines where the Gatting car is certainly a match for the Volvend car, and that means that Fabienne is denied in trying to get right onto the back of the Michelle Gatting car and trying to make an overtake through one of the two sets of chicanes, well, 3 sets of chicanes if you include the Villeneuve chicane, which is where the cars are now, and she's not close enough to be able to pursue this. This must be immensely frustrating for the girl with the golden locks, Nico, Fabienne Volvend.
Well, obviously you don't want to run behind another car, and every time you just get the feeling you've got that car in your grips, then on the straight line it accelerates and you can't quite keep up. But Fabienne is such an experienced racer, she will know to turn that anger into something positive, and she will stay on. If she ever senses an opportunity, she will go for it. So it's gonna be interesting, and obviously Michelle, she's being hunted, she has to check her mirrors as well. So that puts a lot of pressure on her just the same.
There is a battle going on in AMS as well for the lead, and that is between Mathias Weibo and Frederik Paulsen. And Frederik Paulsen is getting closer to Mathias Weibo now. Mathias's father, Miroslav, races in the Copa Shell class of the Ferrari Challenge. Real family affair in terms of their competition in Ferrari. But for my money, Frederik Paulsen now is getting closer than ever before to Mathias Weibo. So the standings on the bottom of the screen for you in terms of the Trofeo Pirelli AMS. Weibo, Paulsen, Gertz, then it's AC and Zeeman. Frederik Paulsen now is flashing his lights. Now the reason drivers do that is just to try and break the concentration of the driver ahead of you. All they want is just a small, the tiniest of errors, and that will be enough as Paulsen takes a look at the inside here. Weibo was well aware of that coming, though, and made the car as wide as he needed to, but in reality, I don't think Paulsen was close enough to be able to try and get past Mathias, so it didn't happen. Mathias Weibo continues to lead, and you can see the gap has really come down between the two of them, so the fight on for P1 in Trofeo Pirelli AM. Mathias Weibo, engineered by Scuderia Prague. Frederik Paulsen, engineered by Formula Racing, the team that have had so much success in Ferrari Challenge racing. And Fabienne Volvend again turns the wick up against Michelle Gatting as we cross our attention to the fight for P2 in Trofeo Pirelli Pro. So Michelle Gatting driving the number 83 car, Fabienne Volvend driving the number 5 car. They are P2 and P3. And on board once again with Michelle Gatting in 5th gear, 4th now, as she goes through this chicane, back on the power once again. These 488 cars, extraordinary racing machines. When it was announced that there was going to be an Evo version, a lot of people feigned a surprise because the car was so good. How can you make a car even better? Well, the extraordinary engineering team in Ferrari have done that. The 488 Challenge Evo is an even better car than the 488 Challenge. Right! I think Fabienne is closer now than she's been on previous laps, and that's also the case for Frederik Paulsen on Mathias Weibo. So we've got two fights going on here. Don't know which one to cross to. I think marginally Fabienne was closer to Michelle Gatting perhaps than Frederik Paulsen is to Mathias Weibo. Again, just shows the front end of his car to the rearview mirrors of of Vibo by being on the inside, and the Scuderia Prague team there. Of course, their driver is leading in class, and here comes Michel Gatting being hounded all the way by Fabian Volvend, and just wonder whether Michel is just beginning to look a little raggy in comparison to the super smooth Fabian. Maybe. In the meantime, we should mention our race leader, Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, who's 4.5 seconds up the road from these two who are fighting, because the more these two fight, the more it plays into the hands of Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, who can just concentrate on his performance around the circuit, nailing every apex, being super smooth and just getting up the road. Whoever wins out in this battle for P2 is going to have a devil of a job, in my opinion, to get on terms with Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, because we only have 16.5 minutes of the race left. So, Michel Gatting, Fabian Volvend, and now, once again, Fabian is able to close the gap on Michel, but on the fast sections of the circuit, I think that the Iron Lynx Nicky Hasler engineered 488 is definitely the match for the Octane 126 car, but it's in the twisty bits of the circuit where Fabienne, whether it's just her knowledge of the Ferrari Challenge car, whether it's her knowledge of Imola, she's just able to close in on Michel a bit. But when it comes to these sections of the track, the fast straight sections, then Michel Gatting has got the grunt of the car to help. So now into this chicane, definitely Fabienne is closer. You can see now the live gaps between Michel Gatting and Fabian Volvend as now they approach turns 5 and 6, the Variante Villeneuve turns, and now Fabian Volvend is welded to the back of the Michel Gatting car. This fight for P2 is intensifying and is about to get even more exciting. Now the cars drive uphill. What can Fabian do? Where can Fabian try and provoke a small mistake from Michel Gatting that would enable her to seize this P2 position, which she so desperately wants, having been disappointed with the race start, where, of course, Fabienne was pole position and lost out to Emanuele Maria Tabacchi and, indeed, Michel Gatting, which is why she finds herself in P3. Is she even going to be able to get a little bit of a toe off the back of the Michel Gatting car? She's that close now. So the gap between them is just tense. Deborah Mayer looks on, and Manuela Gosner looks on. Manuela Gosner, of course, a former star in the Ferrari Challenge. Give us a smile. Well, it's difficult to tell with the mask on, isn't it? Both rooting, of course, for Michel Gatting, one of the Iron Lynx drivers, who is P2. There is our race leader, Emanuele Maria Tabacchi. Fabienne, in her quest to get on terms with Michel Gatting, kicks up a little bit of dust then on the exit of Ravazza 2. What's the live gap between them as they cross the timing line? It's just 3/10 between Michel Gatting and Fabian Volvend. Fabienne now I think that maybe she would take a look at the inside, but again, there was no denying that Michel Gatting knows exactly where to place the car to defend, and they're both doing a superb job here. It's brilliant racing between the two of them, but the cars and the drivers are so closely matched that it is going to take a mistake, I think, before Fabienne can really try and overtake, because they are both on such a similar pace. Emanuele Maria Tabacchi's gap at the front has increased to just over 5 seconds. Under braking then, Fabienne again tries to get ever closer, but Michel is stoic and steadfast in defense of that P2 position. The same is true of Mathieu Vibo and Frederick Paulsen in the Trofeo Pirelli AM class. They remain the same, although Paulsen has just put in a quicker lap than Mathieu Vibo. See if that counts for anything. On board once again with Michel Gatting, who absolutely throws it over the curbs and controlling the car absolutely beautifully, knows exactly where to place it, how to get the maximum momentum, and taking as much curb that is going to ensure the fastest way through without compromising the exit. And again, oh, you can see Fabienne is just doing everything to try and get even closer to the Hublot liveried car of Michel Gatting. Now, Is Fabienne going to take a look at the inside now? If she can remain close enough now, I think Fabienne might just dive to the inside of Michelle Gatting as they head towards the chicane. No, she can't. She's not quite close enough, and in fairness, Michelle made the car as wide as possible and denied Fabienne the opportunity to even look at the inside line going into that Variante Tamburello. So, wherever Fabienne Volvend wants to try a move, that move is being denied by the brilliant defensive driving from Michelle Gatting. They are matched virtually by 10th here. They are so on the pace together. And Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, it has played right into his hands. It's brilliant driving from Michelle Gatting, brilliant driving from Fabienne Volvend as well. And as you've said previously, Nico, she's of even mind, isn't she? She's not going to lose her temper and try and do anything silly, is Fabienne Volvend.
No, and why would you? In the first race of the season, you need to first... Obviously, you want to finish as high up as possible, but equally, you want to finish first before doing anything else. So, yes, she would pounce on any mistake, but she will not lose her head and lose her cool, and both of them are so experienced in multiple categories. Unfortunately, we saw Thomas Neubauer having to dive into the pits. He made up some places initially, but it never felt like he had the speed in the car that you would expect from him, and then his pace really dropped off and he had to relegate and leave his car in the pit. So sad he won't be able to interfere with this battle, but it's entertaining enough as it is, isn't it?
You're absolutely right, and thanks for bringing us that. Whilst our attention has been focused on this battle, I completely missed the fact that, sure enough, Thomas Neubauer dived into the pit lane of unfinished business in the Ferrari Challenge from 2019. His start in 2020 has not been as perhaps as positive as he would have liked, but he will come back stronger and even better when it comes to their second race tomorrow. In the meantime, let's continue this compelling fight for P2 that is continuing between Michelle Gatting and Fabienne Volvend. 6 seconds is the margin now, just to mention Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, who is leading the race. Incidentally, Mathieu Weibo continues to lead in terms of the AMS, ahead of Frederick Palsen and Oliver Grutz. That's the way it is in terms of the AMS, but we can't really take our eyes away from this battle for P2. What have we got? Just under 10 minutes of the race remaining. And I think under extraordinary pressure, this has been a very, very good drive from Michelle Gatting, who has not bowed to the pressure of Fabienne Volvend and has managed to make sure she stays in that P2 place. And this man, Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, who we heard from right at the beginning of the program, well, he's setting his stall out the way he would like to in this first race by ensuring that his clutches on the Trofeo Pirelli AM Championship last year are in the best possible place to replicate that when it comes to the Trofeo Pirelli Pro Championship this year. Very, very good driving from Emanuele Maria Tabacchi as Fabienne Volvend. You could see the front brake discs on both the cars really lighting up as the braking force is put through these 488 Challenge Evo cars. Right, is Fabienne now going to try a different strategy as they approach the Variante Tamburello? I wonder, because she's as close on this lap as she's been on previous laps. Michelle Gatting hasn't got the clear speed advantage that she's had previously. Sure enough, Fabienne took a look at the inside. It was denied by Michelle. She could see it coming and made sure the car was wide enough to prevent Fabienne Volvend from coming through on the inside on the approach to the Variante Tamburello. They're on the way to the Variante Villeneuve now. Turns 5 and 6. Again, Michelle Gatting, the back end of the car looks quite skittish under braking. I just think that, Nico, you may well be right here, that tyre deg is going to play a part in this with just over 8 minutes remaining. I just wonder whether Fabienne, who has been very aggressive, but perhaps has kept off the curbs a little bit more than Michelle and therefore has been a little bit smoother, whether she will, in the final stages of this race, just have the rubber advantage perhaps to get by Michelle Gatting. Do you think I've seen that correctly?
It certainly looked like it across the last few turns. Then again, maybe it's just a little bit of the pressure from Fabienne showing where Michelle felt, oh, this is really, really tricky now. She's so close, and she just tried to overdrive the car for a few turns. So it may just come back as she heads down the hill here. Then again, if Fabienne gets past, then obviously it will be tricky for her to keep Michelle behind her, possibly on the fast sections of the track. So it's anyone's guess how this one will turn out.
As always, Nico Spalek, the voice of sensibility and calm, cool and collected. Unlike me, I get so emotional because I enjoy this racing so much that he brings us the facts, and you may well be right, Nico, but let's see. Because these two now are being caught by Mathieu Weibo. It's completely academic because Weibo is in a different class, but nonetheless, the gap has come down to... Oh, as Fabienne dives to the inside of Michelle Gatting in a really clean and tidy move. She's done it after lap after lap after lap of trying to do so. Fabienne Volvend has gone through on Michelle Gatting. I would love to see a replay of the start of that overtake because it looked like she just anticipated it perfectly. And Michelle was probably going to close the gap, but by the time she wanted to close the gap, Fabienne was already through and into P2. Brilliant overtake from what we saw from Fabienne. She is now P2. Michelle Gatting relegated to P3. Well, we've got 6 minutes left. Here it is. Oh, that was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You could see that Michelle wanted to turn in to close the door, but Fabienne had already put her nose right alongside that number 83 car. And that meant that Michelle had nothing to offer in terms of defending against Fabienne Volvend. A brilliant overtake, but I have to say the entertainment that both those drivers has given us in this race has been extraordinary. Fabienne now is some 7 3/4 seconds down on Emanuele Maria Tabacchi. We've got 5 3/4 minutes of the race left. Unless disaster would befall Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, he should have this sewn up. But that is not going to stop Fabienne from trying. And you can see now that as Fabienne has got past the Michelle Gatting car, just how much quicker she is. Because as they cross the timing line, let's take a look at the gap between between Fabienne and Michelle, and it's big in the space of 1 lap. So Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, who has been super smooth and cool as a cucumber, all of a sudden has got to be aware of the fact that 7 seconds behind him is Fabienne Volvend. As I say, I think the gap is just much too great. We're now down to 6.277, as you can see. So I think the gap is just too great now because we've got less than 5 minutes remaining. But nonetheless, Emanuele Maria Tabacchi has got to be on his mettle here. Of course, it's all very well catching someone. You've got to catch them and find your way past them. That's not so easy either. But Fabienne perhaps will rue the fact that it took us so long to get by Michelle. Can you even see Fabienne in the shot? No, you can't. Look, Emanuele Maria Tabacchi has gone through even before you see this car from Octane 126, which is the car of Fabienne Volvend. So Fabienne then into P2, Michelle Gatting P3. Now her P3 is assured because Thomas Neubauer, the only other pro class driver, is in the pit lane. But she might come under some pressure from Mathieu Weibo before the end of the race, potentially, but within class it will matter little. There is the number 73 car of Zeeman, who is running in P5 in class, ahead of the AC car, which is actually P4 in class, and then Zeeman is P5. So that's the fight that's going on for P4, but it's not a huge fight. AC seemingly got it all under control. The two red 488 challenge cars then that are running in the AM class of this Ferrari Trofeo Pirelli race. So on board then with the Rosso Corsa team. And here is Emanuele Maria Tabacchi then, representing that team with aplomb, it has to be said, right from the very start. He drove that car with perfection. He's got to hold on to it for the next remaining 3 minutes or so in this race to hold on to that lead. So Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, P1 in terms of Trofeo Pirelli Pro drivers. In terms of the AM drivers, it's Mathieu Weibo, the number 25 car that we can see there is that of AC. Another one of the Rosso Corsa racers being pursued here by the 73 car of Roman Zeeman from Octane 126, the very same team that engineered Fabienne Volvend. This is Mathieu Weibo for Scuderia Prague, who've had huge success over the years with their Ferrari Challenge races. Scuderia Prague, very much a super team and can deliver a very, very fast car, as they've done for Mateusz Weibo here. And we'll see Mateusz's father, Miroslav, racing in the Copa Shell race to come a little bit later this afternoon. We're live from Imola, and on board with the Scuderia Prague driver, Mateusz Weibo, who is P1 and a couple of seconds ahead of Frederick Paulsen, the Formula Racing driver, who is running in P2. So the twisty-turny parts of the Imola circuit, 21 turns across this 4.9 kilometre track, 12 of them left-handers, 9 of them right-handers, and lots of elevation changes as well. So the gap between Weibo and Paulsen then 1.353 seconds, with, well, by my reckoning, we'll get maybe 2 more laps in this race. By the time our race leader, Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, has crossed the timing line, I think we'll get 2 more laps. Let's see. Mateusz Weibo has done absolutely nothing wrong in this race, and whilst he's been pursued by Frederick Paulsen from Formula Racing, Paulsen has never really looked quite close enough to be able to have a meaningful go. Top speed standings, though, Paulsen 274.9, matching that of Thomas Neubauer, who sadly is not taking part in the race anymore. He's in the pit lane, and David Gostner didn't take up his position on the grid for whatever reason. He was certainly in qualifying, but Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, despite leading the race, is only 3rd or 4th fastest in terms of the speeds through the speed trap. But the gap between himself and Fabian Volvend, whilst it has come down and Fabian has got a little bit closer, it's still 6.7 seconds. So with less than a minute remaining in terms of race duration, Emanuele Maria Tabacchi has got nothing to worry about. Here is Michelle Gatting. Did such a good job in terms of holding off Fabian Volvend for as long as she possibly could, but she has dropped back some 5 seconds behind Fabian Volvend now, which just indicates the pace advantage Fabian Volvend had, as Emanuele Maria Tabacchi then will cross the timing line now to start what will be the final lap of this Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli races. Our 2020 season gets underway again from Imola. From Imola we head off, of course, to Barcelona, but bear in mind we have another Trofeo Pirelli race to come tomorrow. But it is Barcelona, then Portimao in Portugal, back to Italy for Ferrari Racing Days in Mugello, and then Belgium with the Spa-Francorchamps circuit, where these cars will really stretch their legs. Then Misano, and then the World Finals to come in Abu Dhabi. Of course, Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, a fan of the Middle Eastern circuits. You'll recall when we heard from him right at the start of this program how much he enjoyed being in Bahrain at the beginning of last season. Already he's got his hand out of the window there, as he's pretty convinced that he's going to take the checkered flag, and barring utter disaster, I can see no reason why that would not be the case, with some 6.3 seconds to the good. Of course, sadly, no spectators here on track as we run the opening Ferrari Challenge races behind closed doors, of course. But the victory will still taste sweet for Emanuele Maria Tabacchi to set the season off in exactly the right style. Well, he took the Trofeo Pirelli AM Championship last year. Not only that, he took the World Final race as well. He had a stellar year in terms of his Ferrari Challenge racing, and it looks like he's going to have another stellar year in 2020 as well. One more turn to do, and this is it. The Ravazza turn, although there's a couple of kinks before the checkered flag, but he won't consider them turns. What he will consider is the fact that he is victorious here in Imola as he crosses the timing line and takes the checkered flag. Emanuele Maria Tabacchi wins in Imola. Now, what has happened to Fabian Volvend? Fabian Volvend, a problem with the car. So Michelle Gatting takes P2. Now, Fabian Volvend should be able to nurse the car over the timing line to secure P3 in class, although it'll be P5 overall, or maybe even P6. Clearly something wrong with the Fabian Volvend car. Oh, that's so disappointing for her. She'd got past Michelle Gatting, and then right within the final few meters of tarmac, Nico, Fabian loses out. Could you see anything wrong with the car as she passed our commentary position? Because I couldn't.
No, it all looked perfectly in order until basically coming out of Ravazza. And, oh, that's very disappointing. I was about to point out how satisfying that P2 must feel for her after having had that great battle, having the composure and the patience, and now that satisfaction potentially gives way to utter disappointment. I'm sure that is devastating for her, more emotionally than in the points possibly, but she'll feel hard done by.
Yes, and I think she will feel right to feel hard done by. She actually finishes P6 overall. It's still P3 within class, but here is Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, the Rosso Corsa racer, who has won. And won in style, it has to be said. And well done, Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, then. Never looked challenged. The very, very start of the race, he took his chances, knew what he needed to do, did it, executed it perfectly, and did not look back. The big battle, of course, was between Michel Gatting and Fabian Volvend, and it was the fight for P2, which we thought was going to go the way of Fabian Volvend. She'd got past Michel Gatting and had made something of a gap. But then, coming out of the final turn, as Nico said, the Ravazza 2, for whatever reason, the car gave up the ghost, and Fabian lost out on her P2 position and completes P3. Matheus Weibo for Scuderia Prague in the number 56 car wins in terms of the Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli AMS ahead of Frederick Palsen and Oliver Grotz. So the Scuderia Prague driver will be pretty pleased with that, as you can see the Octane 126 car of Fabian Volvend is being pushed back into the just out of the pit lane exit. And here, Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, who's normally pretty lively and emotional when he gets out of the car, he'll be very pleased with this. Come on, be emotional, because I said you would be. He has offered congratulations from the team. And Michel Gatting, when she thought it was going to be P3, actually, I think it's fair to say, and Michelle won't disagree with me, she inherits P2. Well done, Michel Gatting, her first showing in the Ferrari Challenge. And there's Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, congratulated by Michel Gatting. Down there with the shots and the emotions as the drivers get out of their cars. And Emanuele Maria Tabacchi then offered congratulations. Right, let's take a look at the highlights of that race then. So as racing returned to the Imola circuit then, as soon as the lights went out, we knew it was going to be a battle. And battle it was. Emanuele Maria Tabacchi getting the very best of the start and putting himself in that P1 position. There would then ensue a huge battle for P2, and just one or two of the drivers, including AC, finding the gravel. Now, Michel Gatting, for almost the entire race, was under pressure from Fabian Volvend, and Thomas Neubauer, another driver that found the gravel too. But Michel Gatting being pursued by Fabian Volvend, and it looked like Fabian was not going to be able to find a way by, but here she did, and did it with real style, and Michel Gatting could do nothing to try and come back on Fabian Volvend. Would that be the end of the story for P2? Well, actually, it wouldn't. Emanuele Maria Tabacchi had built up such a lead in terms of Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli Pro drivers that he couldn't really be caught by anybody. And he then took the checkered flag to take the first win for Trofeo Pirelli Pro. Confirmation of the result then in the top three in both classes. Trofeo Pirelli Pro, Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, Michel Gatting, Fabian Volvend. Trofeo Pirelli AM, Matheus Weibo, Frederick Palsen, and Oliver Grotz then. The 1, 2, 3 in each of the classes. So big disappointment for Fabian Volvend, who thought that she was going to be able to bank the P2. In actual fact, banks P3. So the top three in both, and we are going to go down and try and catch up with Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, who is the victor in terms of pros.
Emanuele, your first race this season and your first win. You are a fantastic driver, very flying race. What do you feel now?
Very happy because I wanted to be as fast as the first pros, and from the free practice to the qualifying, I was almost there. So I'm already happy. I will have been happy also second, third, but with this is a dream.
Very much a dream come true from Emanuele Maria Tabacchi then, who, as he said, you know, being elevated from the AMS, which is where he competed last year, up to pros, it's a big ask, to be honest. And we'll be seeing Emanuele Maria Tabacchi on the podium along with Mathieu Weibo in just a few moments' time. So as the podium is readied and social distance being observed, of course, we will see Emanuele Maria Tabacchi and Michel Gatting and Fabian Volvend on the podium. Thomas Neubauer sadly didn't finish the race, as you can tell. I should remind you there's new points scoring in terms of the Ferrari Challenge this year. And the points that will be awarded for the race, Emanuele Maria Tabacchi picking up some 15 points, Michel Gatting 12 and Fabian Volvend 10. There is another point for entry. There's also a point for the pole position and a point for the fastest lap as well. That's the way the points work out. The top 8 score points in terms of the Ferrari Challenge, and points, as always, utterly critical when it comes to the championship, of course. So Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, Michel Gatting, Fabian Volvend, the three that we'll see on the Trofeo Pirelli Pro podium. There will be an AM podium as well, which will include Mathieu Weibo on the top step, then Frederik Paulsen and Oliver Grotz. They will occupy P1, P2, P3 in terms of the AM podium. So podium being readied as we speak. Another Trofeo Pirelli race to come tomorrow, live from Imola. And we have a Copa Shell race to come a little bit later this afternoon as our Ferrari Challenge return to our condensed calendar continues. And at last we can go back to racing and start once again here at Imola. What a great place to start. So good shot of the Imola circuit here. And here you can take a look at some of the super slow-mo images that we've been able to take from our race today. Emanuele Maria Tabacchi starred in Bahrain last year in his first race and stars here in Imola as he continues his quest as a top racing driver. The Iron Links lady Michel Gatting and the Octane 126 driver Fabian Volvend. Mathieu Weibo, a star in terms of Trofeo Pirelli AMS for Scuderia Prague, pursued by the Formula Racing driver Frederik Paulsen, and of course Oliver Grotz as well, who takes P3. There you could just see in shot the AC and Z-Man battle that continued to rage for P4 and P5 in terms of the AM class during the 13-minute race. And I can see from looking out of the window here that the podium is nearly readied. And we'll be going down there for the official podium ceremony. Super livery across the number 87 car of Oliver Grotz from Formula Racing. Heck of a blank canvas, the 488 Challenge car, in terms of adding your personality and your style to it in terms of the livery that you want. So this is the man that did a great job today, Emanuele Maria Tabacchi. If you've been part of the Ferrari Challenge for a while, you will know just what a good driver he is. And there we can see, with everyone keeping their distance, there is the podium readied. 18 laps then is what we achieved. Top speed, Thomas Neubauer 274.9 and Frederik Paulsen. Total overtakes then, 2 in Trofeo Pirelli, 5 in terms of Trofeo Pirelli AM. Emanuele Maria Tabacchi making the best progress, and Mathieu Weibo as well. Fastest laps, and bear in mind a point for that come Emanuele Maria Tabacchi for the pros and Frederik Paulsen for the AMs. So behind the podium then, the drivers are being prepared, ready to make their way out onto the podium and receive their awards for the first race in our Ferrari Challenge. season. As I said, a condensed season as we have the same number of races, but we will head off to Barcelona in Spain in a couple of weeks after this weekend in Imola. Then it will be Portimao circuit in the Algarve in Portugal before heading back to Italy for a Ferrari Racing Days event in Mugello. Then another Ferrari Racing Days event in Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium before we head off to Misano. And then the glittering World Finals to come in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates at the Yas Marina circuit right at the beginning of November. So that is our condensed Ferrari Challenge calendar, and this is the race-winning car of Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, engineered by Rosso Corsa. And there you can see the Rosso Corsa livery on the front end of the Emanuele Maria Tabacchi car. So the driver's presumably in makeup at the moment behind the podium because they're taking their time in appearing on the podium. And bear in mind, we should have two podiums. Whether we'll have time to bring you both of them is unclear at the moment, but it traditionally is the Pro Podium first and then the AM Podium. So there is the Michel Gatting car. I love the livery on the Michel Gatting car, engineered by Iron Link's Nikki Hasler, team headed up by Deborah Mayer. Michel Gatting, one of a huge list of famous drivers from Denmark, including one Mr. Niklas Nielsen, of course, who was champion in Ferrari Challenges, now an official Ferrari GT driver. So. Right, I can hear Michele Mambelli bringing the drivers out onto the podium. There is Fabian Volvend. Here comes Michel Gatting, who, of course, didn't think she was going to get P2, but she did. And good camaraderie between the two of them. Michel knows that she was very lucky to take that P2. And Emanuele Maria Tabacchi goes to the top step of the podium. So the trophies are held aloft. The anthem plays out then for Emanuele Maria Tabacchi, P1, P2, Michel Gatting, and P3, Fabian Volvend. Exit stage left. There you go. They'll do stage right. Stage left as we look at it. So, whether we have time to bring you the Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli AM podium remains to be seen as we cross back to a look at the start-finish straight that isn't a straight here at Imola. And confirmation of the result in terms of Trofeo Pirelli AM. Mathieu Weibo taking the win from Frederik Paulsen. Then it was Oliver Grotz. Then it was AC. And then Roman Zeeman and David Gosner, for whatever reason, didn't appear on the grid. He certainly appeared during qualifying, but wasn't there on the grid. Didn't take his place up on the grid, so didn't compete in the race. So Mathieu Weibo, Frederik Paulsen and Oliver Grotz, the drivers that we were expecting to see on the Trofeo Pirelli AM podium, P1, P2 and P3. So a good day for Scuderia Prague and a good day too for Formula Racing, who have both their drivers P2 and P3. So I think they're about to make their way out onto the podium any moment now. Sure enough, we can hear Michele Mambelli bringing the drivers out. Here comes Oliver Grotz then, who will take step 3. Taking step 2 will be Frederik Paulsen. And Mathieu Weibo then goes to the top step of the podium. National anthem then to play out. So the national anthem plays out, and everyone assembled in the pit lane I can see below me, keeping their distance, but certainly raising their hands and applauding the top three in terms of Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli Am. Well done to Matheus Weibo, to Frederick Paulsen, and to Oliver Grotz. They're making their way off their podium now, and the Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli race done and dusted. And we'll see you for another race in Trofeo Pirelli tomorrow, but Copa Shell still to come. Bye-bye for now.